Hello, my name is Catherine Trammell, and this is my computer graphics final project. For this project, I implemented a outlining technique using a stencil buffer. So you can see here I have this rotating cube, and it's being outlined by this blue outline. Oops, we can venture around a little bit here and see that it's being outlined by this blue outline. So let's dive into the code a little bit. The logic for this lived in this STL graphics program file, and the first thing I had to do was just set up the stencil test and buffer, and to do that I used GL enable stencil test, and I set the stencil operations here. What's really key here is this replace, which pretty much just allows us to replace the bits in the buffer when both the buffer test and the stencil test pass. And then we go down, and this render is where most of the logic of the actual algorithm lives. The main algorithm works as follows. So pretty much we render the grass as normal, ignoring the stencil buffer and also not writing to it at all. Then next we render the cube as its normal size, and also as its normal shader. So we're rendering it with the texture and the lighting and everything like that. In doing that render, we write ones to the stencil buffer, so that there's a 1 everywhere in the stencil buffer where that cube lives. The next part of the algorithm is to then scale up the cube just a little bit, and then use a new shader, which is just gonna be that blue color that you saw. And in this rendering of this larger, just plain blue cube, we only want to write where we're not overlapping with the actual cube, and how we do that is we use the stencil. Like I said, you'll see here we draw the grass as normal, and to do that we use this GL stencil mask, and we set it to this value, which is just pretty much saying don't write to the stencil at all here. The next thing we do is we draw the cube as normal, but this time writing to the stencil buffer. And so to do that, we set this stencil mask to be this value, which is saying go ahead and write to the stencil. And we're using the GL stencil func, which is just saying this GL always is saying we want to always draw the cube, and then we want to write ones everywhere where the cube is in this stencil buffer. You'll see we're using our regular fragment shader here, which has a bunch of logic about lighting and uses the texture and all of that. And then the next step, like I said, is to draw the outline. And you'll see we scale by a factor of 1.1, so we scale the cube up just a little bit. We go ahead and use this new fragment shader, which just outputs this blue outline color that you saw every single time. And then this is the stencil logic here. So first thing we want to do is say disable the depth test, and also don't write to the stencil at all. We only really want to be reading from the stencil here, not writing to it. And then how we achieve that outline is we use this GL stencil func and say we only really want to draw this cube where there are not ones in the stencil. So what that means is that we're not overwriting anything of the cube that we've already rendered. We're just writing that outline of the cube. And that's my final project. I mostly used we can boot it up again, sorry. So I mostly used a Learn OpenGL tutorial for this, and I added my own little touch by making it rotate, which I think really highlights and shows just the outlining functionality, and also proves that the algorithm is durable to change like this. Thanks for watching.